Korea and the Philippines. Comparison of which popular culture.
So, language. Language, as we all know, is a crucial means for communication and interaction. Language not only reflects and expresses facts and observations, it also influences attitude and behavior. And based on this understanding, language is defined as a medium of expressing ourselves, our identity, and our culture. However, through time, language became from a medium to a mean of representation of ourselves, our identity, and our culture. And there's no best example as the Korean language. The fact that we can now recognize that annyeonghaseyo means hello, saranghaeyo means I love you, and opa means older brother is the best evidence that language is now becoming a crucial part of popularizing a certain culture. So let us now discuss the Korean language. The Korean language is made up of its own alphabet and writing system. It is spoken by almost 80 million people and is the official language of South and North Korea. The Korean language is comparable to the Philippines Filipino language or Tagalog, in which even though there is different regions in the country, we can all speak or we can somehow recognize this national language that we speak. And it is also the same with Korea. Although that there are many versions or dialects in that country, they have this national language which is the Korean language. And of course, when we talk about the language, we cannot skip the topic of the alphabet. So the Korean alphabet. Hangul is the writing system of the Korean language. Hangul is made up of 14 consonants and 10 vowels, making it an alphabet with a total of 24 letters. Hangul is comparable to the Abacada alphabet of the Filipinos, in which it also have a history of itself because we all know that our Abacada came from or inspired from the Americans' English alphabet because the Americans are the first one to bring education here in the Philippines and the widespread education in which why our Abacada is inspired with the English language. The history of Hangul is that the king of that dynasty noticed that the literacy rate of his citizen is getting lower and lower because their alphabet is quite complicated. So he thought of an idea of making their alphabet a lot easier, in which the letters represent the shape of the mouth. When you say O, your mouth goes in a circle form. So the letter that represents the O is in the letter form. When you say M, your mouth is in the square shape, so the letter that represents M is in a square shape. This is only a few examples and there's a lot more which makes the alphabet and the language itself much more interesting. So what are the reasons why people learn Korean? So first one is it is easy to learn. Of course, aside from its easy alphabet, it is very engaging and fun. And of course, the Philippines as well, because the foundation of the Abacada alphabet of the Philippines is English and it is easy to learn as well. The second is K-pop and K-drama. K-pop and K-drama is very appealing to the millennials nowadays. It is very viral, and if I am a K-pop fan or a K-drama fan, I becoming interested in learning that language that my idol is speaking or that movie is speaking. Compared to the movies and pop here in the Philippines, it's not more dominant. The next is the social media. The Korean language in social media is very dominant nowadays. When you open social media, you always hear blogs starting with an annyeonghaseyo or a post with a caption of written in Korean. So people who are engaging in social media and reading this post are also influenced to learn the Korean language, in which proves its power. In Filipino, some Filipino terms are also being trended in social media such as Lodi, Mabuhay, Salakam, and many more, in which it also makes us proud that other people are using our language. And lastly, but certainly not the least, is the very dominant marketing of Korean culture. The biggest difference of Korea compared to other countries is that it pursues music and artistry in spreading its culture. It gives importance to this aspect that they should or the people have the responsibility to spread their culture around the world. They think it is something to be proud of, in which I think makes a difference and makes Korean really powerful in influencing or in the global entertainment nowadays, in which they can have the power of influencing the millennials and the people who are in technology. Compared to the Philippines, in which parents usually don't encourage their children to pursue artistry or music because they think it is not a stable job, a stable paying job, or you can have a stable future. To end this, language is such a beautiful thing and is a representation of yourself, and no language is better than the other.
Pinoy Korean cuisine are more similar than you think. Korean cuisine has fermented pastes like gochujang and doenjang. Filipino cuisine uses fermented ingredients like buro and miso. A lot of Korean stews are also enhanced with fish sauce and solid fish or shrimp. If that sounds familiar to Filipinos, it's because we have our own patis and bagoong or kinamos. Galbijim. A K-drama food favorite, galbijim, is quite similar to a Filipino favorite we call pares. Beef is stewed until it's tender in a broth that's flavored in soy sauce and sugar. Probably the only difference between in the two dishes would be that galbijim has vegetables like carrots and radishes, while we flavor our pares with star anise. Meanwhile, the Korean favorite Tangshok featured heavily in K-drama Walk of Love is their version of sweet and sour pork. And for us Filipino, we enjoy those Chinese-inspired sweet and sour flavors on fried fish with our escabecheng isda. So escabeche is just like the Korean tangsuyok. Korean food and Filipino food differ in many ways. Korean food is spicier than Filipino food. Korean tends to use a lot of hot spices in their dishes. From chili powder, chili paste, to fresh chili peppers, all are added in a large quantities as a way to preserve food and color, make it spicy and tasty. On the other hand, Filipino food is also a bit spicy due to its use of garlic and ginger, but these condiments are less spicy than chili peppers and tend to add a warmth and an earthy note to their dishes instead. Korean have a special love for pickles. They have mastered fermenting vegetables, and you can have this dish in any Korean house. The most popular pickle is kimchi, which is made from cabbage fermented with salt and chili paste. Meanwhile, vegetables in the Philippines are typically stir fried or stewed. Rice is often steamed or rolled with other ingredients in Korea, while Filipinos enjoy fried rice. Koreans use chopsticks to eat their food, whereas Filipinos use fork and spoons. And that will be all. Thank you.
Filipino versus Korean clothing. So, the clothing style and fashion of the Filipinos in the modern day era has been influenced by their native ancestors, the Spanish colonizers, and the Americans, as evidenced by the chronology of events that occurred in the Philippine history. Apart from that, the Filipino style of clothing had been dictated by the climate in the Philippines. With a tropical climate, which is the dry and the rainy season, Tagalog men in central Philippines wore baro, which is Barong Tagalog's predecessor, while women wore baro at saya in matching colors made of silk. Fields of textiles had make marks on the social status of Filipinos. Women who are in the higher or in the upper social class would wear silk, while those in the lower class were materials that is made with pounded white bark fibers. Along 1970s, fashion has evolved. Bell bottoms remain a staple of fashion, usually in bright colors and scarves paired with polos. Women's short dresses were screened. The laid-back vibe era led to a more casual look's popularity. Bakya, a kind of footwear, and the denim shirt ensemble became popular. The Filipinos were exposed to various fashion style and brands in the advent of new technology and social media in 2010, which also includes the Korean fashion style. So there became more choices for the people as shopping malls and clothing apparel started dominating the market. Thus, the fashion sense of Filipino has varied. Social has become a platform for finding inspiration through Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, Pinterest, and other social media content.
Korea has four distinct seasons, more mountains than plains, and is bordered by water on three sides. Koreans have created distinctive and amazing food, clothing, housing, and lifestyle because of these circumstances. They also created special garments made of various materials to withstand hard winter and the strong heat of the summer. Handbook can be categorized into ceremonial and casual clothing, with each category further defined by age, season, and gender. Beautiful mixtures of straight and slightly curved lines are used to produce all different styles of hanbok. Particularly among women's handbook, the basic yet endearing balance of their short jackets and full skirts has earned them international fame. The skirt draped around the waist creates a nice equilibrium by making the lower body appear full and the upper body appear extremely little, as the jacket is put on one arm at a time. The clothing's cut and drape flatter and fit the majority of body shapes, in complement to the Korean woman's figure. Although some people still insist on wearing traditional clothing on traditional festivals and important family occasions like weddings, Koreans today appear to prefer modern, Western-inspired clothing than traditional clothing rather. They occasionally produce attractive modernized handbook as a result of their love of tradition and desire for the novel. The emphasis on maintaining one's appearance from head to toe in Korean society as a whole is evident on the streets, both for formal and casual attire. The choice of clothing is typically deliberate and goes beyond merely pulling out whatever is closest to hand. Colorful clothing is a favorite activity of Koreans. They don't hesitate to display their contemporary aesthetic taste by dressing in various materials. There is definitely a flurry of vibrant clothings, as can be seen in K-pop music videos and Korean dramas. Korean lifestyle versus Filipino lifestyle.
Most Koreans have great work ethic, and this is quite evident in all they do. You can say that they live in work and not work to live, which is the opposite of the Philippines, as we enjoy working and do it more for our loved ones. Korea is also known as the intensity starting at a young age. Many children are introduced into the hurried culture that seems unending. They are raised to study multiple hours a day at schools and all kinds of stuff in different subjects like maths, arts, and English, science, and so on. South Koreans take educational very seriously, and it comes as no surprise that funding for science and technology in Korea is one of the highest in the world. While us in the Philippines, we have a virtuous occasion to just relax and not have more many pressures from our parents and allowing us to freely enjoy and mess around a bit to pleasure ourselves for our relaxation. South Korea has the highest female suicide rate in the OECD with 15 points suicide deaths per 100,000 deaths, while the male suicide rate is third highest with 32.5 suicides death per 100,000 deaths. In the Philippines, around 2.2 deaths relating to suicide were recorded per 100 inhabitants in 2019. South Korea is one of the most ethnically homogeneous countries in the world. More than 96 of the population are Korean by ethnicity, with the remaining population a mixture of foreigners from the US, China, and Vietnam, while the Philippine society is uniquely blend of diversity and homogeneity.
Korean values and manners.
What is the difference between the value and manners of Korean people and Filipino people? So the difference between Korean and Filipino, Korean do not have tradition of inviting people over to their homes to have dinner or even just hang out. Korean consider such minor incidents or manners to be action. Respect should always be shown to those that are older than you. Objects, gift, and food should be offered and received with two hands. Korean are reasonable, punctual, and usually prompt. In Korea, people really thank one another for gesture of courtesy, nor do they generally apologize if they bump into one another on the street.
Thank you for watching.